All right, so now on to the good stuff. Welcome to the Red Wheelbarrow Poetry Collective. We are joined tonight by the incredible Xabiso Vili, who is a one-of-a-kind poet who's making his mark all around the world. He was the 2022 World Poetry Slam champion and has won grants, been named in the MNG Top 200 Young South Africans, and is just doing all sorts of amazing things with words, with his take on art, with just everything. If you haven't seen his video poetry things on YouTube, definitely go check them out because those are just stunning as well. You don't know this, Xabiso, but when I was a little baby poet, I used to go to spoken sessions back in Pretoria, and that was the first exposure I had to you, who were like up there in the front, just being incredible, and it was so inspiring, and I've been a fan ever since. So I'm really thrilled to be here sharing this space with you tonight, and getting to see what you got in store for us. Over to you.
Hey, oh wow, spoken sessions. I mean, I was wondering why you look so familiar. I was like trying to pick it up. Yeah, that was an incredible time during that time. So I think I'm going to go into poems. I'm just gonna do a lot of poems. I'm not trying to speak a lot. I'm just trying to have the poems do all the talking. But I hope that I offer a little bit of love and a little bit of joy. So I'm just setting my timer right now. So it's 7:35. I haven't fully decided which poems I'm going to do, but I want to do three different explorations, right? One from my book, Laughing My Father's Voice, another exploration from Black Boy Meets Boogeyman, and an exploration from some new work called, well, I guess I'm sharing this with you today, that I'm working on a new collection called The Past is in Every Direction. I don't have the answers for it yet, but I'm excited. I thought I was going to start with Laughing My Father's Voice, but you started with Dadnez Smith. And who would I be if I didn't start with some Black Boy poems, if he didn't open up the space with Danez? So I'm just going to go into some Boogeyman meets Black Boy poems, and we'll see what lands and we'll see where we go. All right. Boogeyman meets Black Boy. Been sipping hard liquor with the Boogeyman. He's got the blues. Black boys are in love with dying. They age like bourbon. Life expectancy as long as the bottle, accustomed to hauntings. We, casket heavy, know a barrel like the end of a gun. We drink a funeral song on the rocks, recognize the noose in everything. There's gunpowder on the nose. Taste the bloody burial accent beneath a gaping wound open, hints of violence and spicy protest. We, mellowed with rubber bullets, practice our palate on concrete. Bump in the night, don't scare us. We're the dark side of the moon, trapped in a low bowl tumbler, sipping moonlight to get as drunk as the stars, and you can't hold your whiskey, Boogie. Spilled out on the bathroom floor, I've coated my bedroom walls with fear before, and it still didn't swallow me. Pour him another tot, and my blood is thick in his glass. Black boy, I recognize your type. I'm intimate with your nightmares. They gather beneath your bed like empty bottles you use to chase your death. I've chased your death. He looks just like you. I knew Black Boy was a phantom, drunk as a ghost, breathing whiskey to keep himself alive and calling it protest. Didn't know you were a fairy tale too, a mythical creature mothers made up to frighten their kids. Boogeyman slurs me out his mouth. I am tattered, trying to tug at the shadows caught between his teeth, and the bottom of the bed is a barrel, and the bottle holds us captive. That night, we pass out on top of the sheets and dream that we are as old as days, and all the black boys turn to silver and gray, and finally learn how to age. Boogeyman mistakes his depression for a hangover. He knows the dark side of the bed and the exhaustion that haunts him captive, a breaking quiet that breathes heavy underneath his sheets and rocks his lonely to sleep. Boogeyman is an uncrying beast, always feasting on everybody else's tears, can't stomach his own. Nausea mingles with his marrows, decays his bones, his sternum collapses, and the night spills out. He's been holding demons behind his breath. Now they claw their way out of the rubble of his chest, been feeding on his insides. He's all skin and no bones, wasted away on the teeth of his anxiety. Boogeyman can feel the rot in his gut with regret filling his hollow. He loses his appetite like his memories, loses himself in the drunken haze, has started losing days. Boogeyman blames the whiskey, but whiskey has no mouth to defend itself, just an abyss that stares back. Boogeyman can't find himself. Been at this too long, playing drinking games with Black Boy Pain, can't keep up. Started to recognize the symptoms of sabotage and morning sweats, shivers and shakes himself awake. Boogeyman runs himself a bath as long as redemption, wipes the steam clinging to the mirror, trying to keep itself alive. And when Boogeyman finally finds his reflection, this time he is not afraid. Yeah, I just had a boogeyman come arrive and pat me on the head. I'm so I'm so happy that I brought a boogeyman to life. Um, and so boogeyman gets ready for a date. Boogeyman tries to say, I love you, and a maggot crawls out his mouth. Today, he will pick the carcass from his teeth, will practice smiling, and it will not be stale and decaying. We'll make a chapel of these catacombs. We'll make a shrine of his lips. Boogeyman might just use a pickup line. There must be something wrong with my eyes because I can't take them off you. Then Boogeyman will put his eyes back into their sockets. Be gentle. It's his first time. He is learning the fullness of a heart while loved. His chest drags him to the ground, finds himself in prayer. He is unaccustomed to this weight. His body has had no space for holy, But today, Boogeyman is in love, practices all his tender in front of the mirror, undresses from his monster, unties his intestines, and the butterflies come spilling out. They've been growing inside his belly. Faith wraps around his gut. Boogeyman has started believing in the future. He imagines his children, and they are not ghosts. And now he's been learning how to dream, has clawed himself out from the nightmares. Boogeyman is clean as an altar. I promise him there's nothing in your tea. He tells me his love will no longer require sacrifice. Boogeyman smiles a sunrise that is a flower in bloom, a joy as wide as the sky with hands to hold you. He says, I love you, and springs a butterfly from his mouth. And all the old gods come to prayer beneath his tongue. Um, So, I mean, after Boogeyman goes on a date, there's a poem called Boogeyman Fox, and I don't know. All right, okay, cool. Fine. I'm gonna do Boogeyman Fox because I want to give Boogeyman a voice as the final poem. The final poem is actually Boogeyman packs himself a burial, but we're not there yet for the death poems. So, the date went well, and Boogeyman fucks. And then after that, Boogeyman writes a love letter. So these are the last two poems I'm going to do from the Boogeyman series before we're gonna go to Laughing My Father's Voice. I think. I think that's what we're doing. Boogeyman fucks. Bruises disappear at her touch. Handcuffed, sin sucked from his skin, scratch marks ripple across the arch of his back. He turns to water in her mouth, explores the other side of the bed. Blindfolded, he is making friends with the dark and his frightened parts. Lips reaching for salvation, trembles as the backboard rattles, a heavy song in tune with the gasping. She unlocks the cuffs, and Boogeyman claws his way up her thighs, turns his mouth into flame, and drips hot wax onto her spine. She sizzles through her teeth, turns his tongue to ice, kisses goosebumps to life across her shoulder blades. The phantom is made flesh, is hot blood and dripping breath. Boogeyman melts down her stomach. Ravenous, tonight he will eat a different kind of dream. Gluttonous, he gorges on a different kind of scream. Blasphemous, God is bursting from her seams. Luminous, Boogeyman's bed glows a different kind of gleam. Oxygen leaves the room. They grab handfuls of hair and sin. Boogeyman's heart is exhumed. She restores his ruin. He rides her moaning, fingers curled and clutching wrists like pearls, ripped sheets and claws. Boogeyman starts to believe in God and all the ways to say his name in vain. He smiles his tomorrow in her hair, cuddling a soft landing, a foot rising up his calf. He is forgetting what the underbelly of a bed feels like. He tries to find the monster in him, but she kisses him to sleep before he can point it out. He wakes to his first sun rays. There is a dawn sitting behind his lungs, and a forever sleeps on his chest. Boogeyman writes a love letter. Dear Black Boy, when did you decide to crawl in underneath the bed with me? You're home at a funeral, a biting chill down the spine of anybody that calls for you. I've gone searching for your name, no longer recognize yourself. I've promised you a mouth that holds you soft. All I've found is the dying. Black boy, the coffin wood clinging beneath your fingernails, the scratch marks in a casket. Which burying is this? Whose bodies have you trapped by your deathbed? I went searching for you. Why do they run from us, Black boy? I only want to show them your heart, be it pulp and bloody, beating in my palms. It is also warm and tender. I would unravel you, Black boy. Show them your beautiful insides. Look at these guts. What courage to live with all of these breakable parts. Recognize the claw marks behind your sternum, the gentle give of cartilage holding all your fracturing would throw your bones like tea leaves to divine a future where you are home and full inside your yielding body. With whom else have you shared a bed so long that would know the delicate trace of your fingertips? How pliable a fist can be when kissed, the supple release of air when you're not clutching onto your breath, hiding it from ghosts who would steal your lungs. What mending can be done with all these demons crowding our spine? You owe yourself exorcism, a deliverance. There is not enough room in your body for the both of us. You must find your own name. And when I'm gone, remember, Black boy, I love you, but it's time you did the same. Yours forever, Boogeyman. All right, that's part one. How are we doing? Anybody want to say anything? Are we gonna chat later? We're gonna keep it going. Um, I guess we're going into the book right now. I haven't fully chosen which poems. I'm just gonna go through it, and as I'm going through it, I'm gonna rediscover the book as you're discovering it as well, if that's all right. All right. I saw one head nod there, so I'll take it. All right. Wait. I also need a moment to breathe. Let's breathe together. Scars. A nightmare lives on my skin. It is broken glass screaming on chalkboard screeching, bubbling to bursting, whilst a little girl hides with her newborn brother underneath a bed that is dissolving, and her sister in standing on top, clawing at an unflinching window in a shack that is burning. Her summer dress is ashing, flaking, unending. I am running on fire with broken knees. An ancient ancestor drops a rock at my feet. I am rolling, and the fire craves company in its dying. My socks melt into my ankles. My jacket's elastic creeps into my waist. My scars catch up to me and simmer into broken glass screaming on chalkboard screeching, bubbling to bursting. I wake from my nightmare and can't peel the memories off my skin. Sometimes I think that I am still burning. Wardrobes. I'm prone to spilling my heart, my guts, my sleeves, my skin, my breath, my clothes, my spine, my blood, my bones, my veins, my tongue, my eyes, my scars, my lungs, my teeth, my lullabies and bedtime stories onto the floor at your feet, and letting you pick through these and choose which ones you want to keep. How you enjoy toying with my intestines, unraveling my tears from the soul up. I'm prone to letting you get accustomed to living out my bag. So prone, in fact, you should not be surprised when you discover just how quickly I can pack. Storm. 1. The entire ocean will pull back, reveal ancient skeletons, will make you think it's safe to wade muddy across history, lose you in the silence. You will build a home here, rickety and sinking and hidden beneath your grandmother's bones. 2. The last time you visited your grandfather, he told you how beautiful your grandmother was, how he met her collecting water at the river, sensual and smooth in her drowning, in his drowning in her. He cried when he couldn't remember her name. 3. Do not be surprised when time comes crashing in and every photo album you've ever hidden beneath your feet starts crumbling. This place begins to look too similar to your grandfather's Alzheimer's. Memory is a crashing, tumbling disaster, and there is no one coming to save you. There are many more poems that lead up to this, but I'm also kind of looking at the time. So I'm just gonna jump to the epilogue. So this book is actually the second edition. Um, I wrote the first edition when my best friend died. And when I'd lost memory during that depression, I didn't even realize that I'd written a book. And then all of a sudden, I get out of the depression. I'm like, oh wow, I've got a book, but I look at it and I'm like, I'm completely not happy with what I've done. Um, and so in the healing process, I decided to release a second edition of the book, to edit many of the poems. And also I edited an epilogue with 4 new poems. Um, I'm gonna read two of them because I also want to get to the passes in every direction to read some of the new stuff. Uh, because hey, we're here and we're safe, and someone shouts safe space and the poet is expected to die on stage is what just came to my mind right now. But hey, safe space, right? All right, epilogue. Um, I wrote this book because I had a bad relationship with my father, but everybody kept telling me that I laugh in my father's voice. And then my father and I started fixing our relationship, and he almost died from COVID. So this is called pulmonary fibrosis. The ventilator almost stole my father's lungs. Laughter is evasive when there are tubes running down your throat. The gag is death will make you soft, or at least his visits will. He did not stay this time. Now my father is telling stories again. We have put aside fists. Instead, we reach for the edges of each other. His breath is short and rasping, and my voice falters and cannot recognize the tender in him. We do not share a language yet. I pick up bits of history he portions with my siblings, infiltrate their joy by clinging to the underbelly of their inside jokes. He is a father playing hide and seek with his child, my feet peeking underneath the curtains, and him looking everywhere except the direction of my giggling. We could all learn from death's grace. I speak a little louder when I tell my siblings of my dreams. My father stands in the eavesdrop of my breath. He calls me on nights when I am reading you these poems, and he'll leave a message in stilted gasps, a labored laughter, and I love you in disguise. Hello, just checking if you're back. Okay, bye. Black Boy Defiance. Walked into the ocean and the water became me. Spilled the sea into a bathtub and tried not to drown in myself. Dead friends crawled their way up my throat. My wrists a river I drink from. I try not to spill the vow and its ghosts that hold me in their palms. I pried my life from the grasp of a death I recognized, took shots of whiskey from a bleeding phantom. We danced to Kendrick Lamar and all the other songs about dying black boys. I poured myself out for the homies, sacrificed another heart to keep breathing. My umbilical wrapped itself around my throat. My mother was the fire. I do not tell her how many times I've almost died, how much blood I've made an ocean that is between me and the ancestors. When will I stop leaking lovers from my fingernails? I've scratched myself raw trying to find the exit wounds, dodged death so often. When does the Reaper take his tax? Another friend died this year, but this black boy stays defiant. Keep my wrists divinely attached to my arms, carve temples from my spine, mistake myself for holy with these bones made of water. I have come to myself to be baptized, a soggy scripture clinging beneath my fingertips, Sam Cooke running out my mouth. I was born a dying flood. name a black boy who wasn't. The waters have offered me exorcisms. I'm afraid the hauntings will leave with the memories. So this black boy stays defiant, has started visiting cemeteries, tipping himself into the soil of the new asleep. Tomorrow, come collect the lilies from these graves. You cannot take them from my mouth, because tomorrow I will not be dead yet. Reminder: your sorrow is not a river. It is not here to drown you. It is holy water, here to baptize you. But if you feel your chest exploding, those are your lungs turning into life rafts. All right, we're going to move on to the pastors in every direction, but I think we need to everybody take a sip of water or take a deep breath. mm. Mm. Yeah, yeah. I've got a lot of new poems here, but I think I'm only going to do one poem from this collection and then call it a night from me. Um, because I'm also trying to figure out if this poem makes sense without the backing story. So I'm going to tell you the backing story. The backing story is going to take like 5 minutes, and the poem is going to be like 2 minutes. And I suppose I'm trying to learn to edit it, right? And so this is the idea of trying to figure out how the past is in every direction, because I'm doing a poem about the James Webb Telescope, which can look into the past. But if you point the James Webb Telescope into one square of the sky, you can see up until 8 billion light years ago. So you can see up until the beginning of time. But if you point it in a different direction, you can still see again up until the beginning of time. So all around us, the Big Bang exists, which becomes so interesting because now we've recently gotten photographs of the Big Bang, and somebody say, "Hey guys, look, it's our family portrait," which was very exciting for me. So the James Webb Telescope is like such an incredible like feat of science, right? Because it took 30 years for them to build it. So after they sent out the Hubble telescope, which gave us most of the images that we know of the universe, when they sent it out into space, it wasn't working. So they shot an astronaut up to go fix it so that now it's working, right? The James Webb telescope, like for it to work, they had to shoot it like 1.5 million kilometers away. It took 6 months for it to travel to like reach its orbit. Like it's literally so far away that like if anything breaks, like you can't send anybody out there to fix it. But what's really interesting about it, because it captures light, it captures, like I said, like if you look at the sun right now, or in the day when it rises, you see the sun for what it was 8 minutes ago, because it takes 8 minutes for light to reach Earth. And so they were able to figure out that, like we can capture old light that's still traveling towards us. And that's why we can take pictures of the Big Bang. So we need mirrors to be able to capture the picture of the Big Bang. So we can capture light from 8 billion years ago. And even at that time, as they're shooting up, it's like it's 3 by 3 kilometers wide. They like you can't even like shoot it up as a 3 by 3 kilometer wide thing, right? You have to fold it up and then shoot it into space. And so they were like, all right, cool. So we need mirrors, but we can't use glass mirrors. So we need plastic mirrors. But then, like, if we shoot it up into space, when we unfold it, when it's 1.1.5 million kilometers away, there's nobody that can fix it. So, like, they figured out after these 26 years that, like, there's 344 single point failures where as this entire telescope is unfolding in space, if one of these things go wrong, then everything we've done for these 26 years and these billion of dollars like just goes down the drain. There's so much more that I want to say about the James Webb Telescope. It just amazes me. Like it's just this is why I love human beings sometimes, just the ingenuity and the constant imagining into an unimaginable really excites me. That's what really moves me, empowers me. But before I speak too much, let me just do the poem. And then I suppose this is my last poem. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Red Wheelbarrow. Thank you, Jacques, for always pushing to make sure I'm out here. Um, thank you, Melissa, for introducing. Thank you to everybody that's in this room for sharing this very tiny moment in the expanse of a universe. This star, this explosion of a star that we live in. Before the universe goes into innumerable darkness. Tonight, I am the James Webb Telescope. The James Webb Telescope can capture light from the beginning of time. Most of the galaxies it holds have already died. Tonight, I unfold the mirror of my arms, and memory is a trickster, the sky a gaping mouth, and all my friends are made of stardust. We are 12 years old. My best friend and I clutch onto the ground, watch the clouds sway, drunk of peach snaps and apple sours. He has not yet tried to catch a train with his chest. I have not yet tried to swallow his dying on the rocks, gasping for breath. Instead, I am 1.5 million kilometers away, floating in the stillness of space, unfolding through 344 single point failures, existing against all odds and too far to be repaired. I origami my joints into a big bang, an epitaph to a universe that doesn't realize it's dying. I'm dreaming of her again at her 18th birthday, sneaking kisses in corners beneath a yearning sky, hiding from pursuing cake and candles. She tells me the stars have never looked so bright. I am not yet at her memorial, packing my tears into the back of my throat, betraying my grief with a trembling voice. I have not yet disappeared into the fold of my sheets, grasping at cascading funerals and dominoing caskets, settling in the earth and at the hands of lovers adept at taking their own lives. Tonight, it is a supermoon. The stars hum of new beginnings, and we must get dressed, unsink ourselves from the depression in our beds, wade through the vast expanse of grief. It took 26 years to build the telescope. And what foresight to believe in a technology that did not yet exist. And maybe it is faith that keeps this universe in place and our dreams in orbit. My oldest friend and I sink into the softness of her scars. She tells me her hopes for the future and how these keep her heart beating and her wrists intact. I've not yet seen her lifeless, and the James Webb Telescope is not a prophet. And tonight, we do not die. There is laughter coming through the walls. Friends return calls. We sing to the moon, and all our graves are empty and sparkling, and all our far away friends are brought home by the night. The James Webb Telescope cannot see beyond the light. We are 12 and we are 18 and we are here and we are now, and we have not yet seen the children we will have, or the children we will become, or all the ways we will end, or all the ways we will begin, but we ride faith into the dark, and the horizon bends to rise behind us, and the telescope is light to our children. And tonight, we are all gathered at the beginning of time, and we are a hope to those that are not yet alive. Hey, poems.
Yeah. Let's clap, everybody. What a way to end. Sure. Don't know how everyone else is feeling. I'm feeling hopeful. I'm feeling big emotions. That was a big poem. That was gorgeous. What an honor to hear new work. Thank you. And old work and all the work. Anybody here who wants to ask something? Any questions? Put your hand up. Wave at the camera. If you're shy, you can type it in the chat. Tsitsi.
Hey, Mr. Vili. I remember you from Rhodes.
What a time. What a time.
What a time. I remember you from Rhodes. Yes. It's great to see you. Your poetry is amazing. Thank you.
It's good seeing you. I'm happy to see an old rodent, hey?
No question? Just saying hi. Yeah?
Hi, Vita.
Yes, into.
Yes, actually, good evening, everyone. Hi, Xabiso. We actually spoke this week, beginning of the week. I did call you. Yes. So I met Xabiso earlier before I left Johannesburg for Cape Town. I think it was in around 2017, 2019, during the Word and Sound Live Literature Market. That's when I interacted with his work. Then when I got to Cape Town, I wanted your book. Search every bookstore. I couldn't find it. Called Joburg Bookshop. But I'm glad I was able to connect with you so that I can get it from you. Such an amazing poet. We support what you have done all over the world representing us. It's so magical how you write. You make it so effortless and so easy. So my question to you is that I started writing about 11 years ago. This month actually I was celebrating 11 years since I started writing. But during the first 4 years of my writing, it was about the learning zone more than the performance zone. It was always about writing. but now I'm getting out of the shell, want to start performing as well. But my difficulty is that reading and performing, what I'm reading doesn't match usually. I see people performing. And my question to you, how do you do that to get into the zone and be able to tap into that energy, into that space, and be able to perform and give people a performance? Because usually we have different types of poets. I mean, we have the poetry for the stage, poetry for the page, but how do you navigate around those issues in terms of being able to perform and give your all into the audience?
Yeah. Actually, thank you for calling me earlier on, Sintu. I've got your copy of your book, waiting for the next word and sound. um, I mean, this is a really interesting question, right? And this is like constantly like, it's a fight between academia, it's a fight between written work, it's a fight between performance work. And I always like, I get confused about like, why is it a fight, right? Some of the best for myself, not even like best, but like some of the most meaningful performances I've done have been performances where I've read, but I always like to I was trained in theater, right? So I always like to add theatrics to the performance, right? And so I'll have pages and I'm throwing pages as I'm reading, but even, this reading that I'm doing, the pages themselves are part and parcel of this performance that I'm doing and the character as well that I'm engaging with, right? But I think that's really far away from the question you're asking, because that's like something that you can be trained to do and you can figure out. I think honestly, for me, the answer is authenticity, right? So if you can discover new things within your writing, if you can discover the audience in you, if you can surprise yourself, if you can still be excited about what you do, I think that's when the performance and the writing both spills out and people will pay attention, right? I wasn't trying tonight to do a performative thing of poetry. I was just like, we're in a Zoom and we're going to read some poems, and that's what I did. And because the poems are true to me as I'm reading them, the emotion will arise. As long as the poem is true, if you want to perform the poem, the emotion will always live inside it, I suppose, is the answer that I think that I'm giving. Yeah.
Much appreciated. I think it all makes sense. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. That was a very, very good question to start getting some answers to. I'll ask mine, then I see Ed and Jacques also have questions. I was curious about specifically your persona poems, so your boogeyman poems, and then maybe to a degree your last poem that you read now, talking about the James Webb telescope. Do you find, like, I also really enjoy writing persona poems, and I find them freeing in like the things you can explore through something else or someone else's voice. So I'm curious, how much do you feel your own voice comes through in your persona versus being able to say things that you wouldn't normally say in your own voice? I mean, they still come through as being true to you for sure, like you just said with your performance, but yeah, what about the persona poem draws you?
All right. Ooh, interesting. I'm gonna tell you guys two secrets, right? The first secret is that I've recently discovered I'm a little bit autistic, right? So I'm trying to figure out my own neurodivergence journey. The second secret is that having discovered out that I'm a little bit neurodivergent and a little bit autistic, like it makes sense why Xabiso Vili, like the name Xabiso Vili, is himself a persona, right? So Xabiso Vili is a character that I put onto stage. My friends don't call me Xabiso Vili. They'll call me X, they'll call me Xabiso. They'll like the people like when I get off stage and we hang out, like I'm not Xabiso Vili to them. So even before I get to writing the persona poems, there's already a character I embody when I get onto stage, or when, you know, I'm trying my best to be able to hold these poems in the way they want to be held. Now, that already being said, the persona poems, you know, from Boogeyman, from Black Boy, I actually really appreciate Black Boy. Black Boy has helped me for the longest time, right? Like, to be able to say things that I'm unable to, Black Boy will say it. I didn't do a poem tonight called Black Boy B, but like Black Boy B is when I discovered Black Boy. And that's in the book, but like Black Boy B just says whatever I can't say. But also Black Boy B speaks, or Black Boy speaks back to me. Like the poems that I write, sometimes I don't realize what I'm going through up until I write the poetry, and Black Boy exists in the poem. And so, yeah, Black Boy Meets Boogeyman was a series of poems that happened during lockdown, where there were many demons I personally myself was holding on to. And then Black Boy brought up those demons in the poems as the boogeyman. And so if you look at the series of poems of Black Boy Meets Boogeyman, there's like a lot of anger at the beginning, and then there becomes like some love that is happening, and then there becomes a burial and like a thankfulness to Boogeyman for holding this space. And I think I'm always, you know, incredibly grateful to all my poems, to all the personas for holding what Xabiso could not hold. And so, you know, I'm really involved in what makes a good poem. I'm out here constantly reading poetry and figuring out what incredible poetry is for me. But I started writing poetry because I didn't understand myself and I didn't understand the world, right? And I think that will always be my holding and my first entry point into poetry.
Beautiful answer. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Ed, over to you next.
Hey, Xabiso, it was an incredible reading. So many great lines. I just didn't know. Wow, just so many. And I love the imagery and the surreal quality of your work. It puts it in a box, but yeah, some of the things are like dreamscapes or nightmares or combination. And so these are just observations, impressions. And then there's also this thread of defiance, resilience, like the life force that just in so many of the poems. So I also had a question about the personas, but I think that's been covered. Yeah, I think the James Webb Telescope poem, that's fascinating kind of canvas for you. It feels like a really like a big place you can just explore everywhere. And yeah, it made me think of Walt Whitman as well, like the kind of exultant, like this, you know. So I'm rambling, but if I have a question, like the surreal, to come back to the surreal things, are there things that influence you, inspire you particularly? Yeah.
Thank you, Ed. So happy to see you again. You left way too early at Rivers Valley. I mean, this is an interesting question because I think, you know, as a Black writer, right, as a queer Black writer as well, and also having picked up a lot of surrealism that exists, I think many of us respond to what surrealism and abstraction is around like, you know, magical realism, Afrofuturism. There's a lot of not even fight back, right? But like redefining genres that didn't necessarily always hold us and be like, how do they hold us now? And so I think for me, in terms of like what inspires me, I'm really interested in Ben Orkney, in Amy Tan, in Jonathan Safran Foer, in people that look at reality but infuse magic into it to make it make sense, right? Whereas like for me, I'm always like, I cool, gravity exists and there's the theory of gravity that is true. But then if I grew up listening to Insomi and folk tales, African folk tales, how do I then explain gravity? So then it becomes interesting for gravity to become this invisible child on the clouds playing with a yo-yo, right? Like then it's like, that's a lot more fun, right? And that's something that I'm more interested in exploring. And I think that's how we begin to make sense of the world. One of the things, the other things, many of the things that I'm excited about, even with the James Webb Telescope, is that if we look at any origin story across the world, like I recently did an entire study of origin stories across the African continent, and then I started to like compare them across various continents. Like the one thing we all share in common is that like there was a point when we had our brains, there was a point that we all looked to the stars and we wondered where we came from, right? And for me, there's no fighting that. There's just like just exploring it and wondering it and asking the questions. And I don't see why the origin folk tales should end with our ancestors, because we're still going to have descendants that are going to ask where we're coming. So we should be writing our folk tales and origin stories and myths right now. Like we are an impossibility to exist. And I think that's slightly what I want to put into the poems. I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I'm sharing what I believe in.
No, absolutely. I think what I was trying to say is it feels like there's already a lot of play in your work, and this kind of direction just makes this possibilities and exploring possibilities. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Jacques, you're up next.
Xabiso, it's wonderful to be in a room with you again. And that was just such an inspired, generous reading. You can hear me, right?
We can.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes, I can. Yeah.
No, fantastic. Fantastic. I'm never quite sure on this thing. And I loved what you said about authenticity. I keep dipping into this book, this guide to contemporary world literature, by a guy, and he's very opinionated as hell and irritating, but he has a way of saying that I really like. If he likes a poem, he says, yeah, he means it. And if he doesn't like it, he says, no, he says that, but he doesn't mean it. You know? And you always mean it. I was also I was particularly moved by the James Webb poem. I love it. But my question's about Black Boy and Boogeyman and the relationship between the two, because it's fascinating for me because they obviously, Boogeyman is scary, but Boogeyman also encourages how did that relationship develop? And how did you, was there a moment when you knew you were going to put that conversation in the center? Because it's not just the persona, it's the conversation between them. That's really wild for me. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So happy to see you again, Jacques. We're gonna be friends for a very long time. I look forward to
Yeah.
it. We'll have many more bottles of wine. Um, but I didn't know I was going to write Black Boy Meets Boogeyman when I wrote it. Right? There was no idea of here is this relationship and this conversation that's happening, right?
Mm.
There was a time when I was um not not happy and trying to find what was the distance between myself and happiness, right? And in between that distance between myself and happiness, I happened to stumble onto Boogeyman. And then I was like, I cool. If Boogeyman is in the way of myself and happiness, let me chat to Boogeyman, right? And so this again comes to that conversation of authenticity. I wrote these poems. I wrote these poems when I was like doing the word and sound poetry slam during COVID. So each month you need to deliver a new poem, but it needs to be like edited into a video. And when I got into that was the second year I was doing that video slam. The previous year I was just slamming with like just form, where I told myself that I'm going to explore different form and how you can put it onto page, but also onto video, and that was cool. And then like the second year I was like, but what am I going to do this year? And Boogeyman said, well, you're going to find yourself, right? So even in the discovery of finding Boogeyman, that's when I started my therapy, and I was out here doing therapy via Zoom before I was slamming, which is one of the things that really assisted me in winning the World Poetry Slam Championship. Was like not that I figured out how to write well, I figured out how to perform well, but rather I'm in therapy trying to figure out like, why am I writing these poems? Like, how do I hold them? And I think, yeah, as much as these personas like exist, I do think that the reason we write is that we're trying to figure ourselves out and how we exist in this wild world, right? Where we can see the Big Bang right now from 8 billion years ago, but like that's already changed. I mean, this is crazy. It's a crazy thing, but like, but we are here. We are now. And when I was saying that, I think I said that we exist in the bright spark before like an endless darkness. Is that in this particular moment, in these 20 billion years, right, that exist, the stars will exist, right? So after the 20 billion years, after that, I think it's about 360,000 to the power of like 373, of like once the stars die, that will be the age of darkness, right? So if you kind of count that, it means that like there's 1 second of a spark, and then there will be 10 billion years of darkness. And we happen to exist in that one tiny second of light. And so for me, that's what's exciting. That's where I'm just like, and we can share this, we can do poems, like how insignificant, but how powerful are we? I'm going to stop. I don't know if I've even answered the
Yeah.
question or I got close. Yeah. Like
No, you did. It's wonderful, and I agree. Prophecy is about being in the present, you know. That's wonderful. Thank you.
exactly. I mean, we were talking about the block universe for ages at Rubik's Castile. I wish I could speak about the blocks universe now, but next time.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Have we got anybody else with a question?
I think we got some in the chats.
Yeah, so there was one about asking about where the recording would be. So that's going to be up on our YouTube, Red Wheelbarrow Poetry Collective YouTube page. Titi, your hand has gone back up.
Yes. I wanted to ask, to what extent is your poetry influenced by the past? Are you more of a future-oriented kind of person? You want to, the way you're talking about like light years from now, the future, the future. Do you sometimes draw from the past experiences? Um, is there anything about that pulls you back?
Yeah, I mean, constantly. So I do a lot of like extended reality work. So I look at like new technologies, augmented reality headsets, and like so I do like a lot of that work. But whenever I do that work, I always draw from Insomi and the past. Where I'm like, yo, we used to gather around the fire to tell stories. And for me right now, the new fire is the digital space, right? Um, that also being said, now I get to I mentioned block theory a little bit with Jacques. I get now to like speak about it like really quickly, where like block theory is it's so interesting for me because it also links to the theory of relativity and stuff, right? Where block theory states that right now God is drawing a picture. That is the present in terms of how we view it, right? But then God will put another page on top of that picture to draw another one, right? So, like in how we view time, the page underneath the picture we're drawing is the past, right? All the pictures God hasn't drawn leading upward in this block, it becomes the future. Block theory states that God has already drawn all the pictures and they all exist at the same time simultaneously. And so for me, especially, like being an ancestral healer and starting to work with ancestors, like for me, when I say the past is in every direction, I feel it all around me, right? When I'm sitting in a bus in Cape Town, I see the past me who used to sit on that bus too, but also I see all the many future possibilities of me, right? But also this particular me that like is speaking to you right now in this now out of this entire block like cannot exist without the us before, without us seeing each other and being like, hey, Rhodes, without our parents seeing each other, be, hey, love, without their grandparents seeing each other and be I mean, there's so many poems I'd love to read about how like I constantly see the past engaging with us to not only form us in this moment, but also to form the future. So for me, like when you're asking, yeah, do you engage with the past to see the future, to see the present? It's like it's not even a question. It's just it's there is no way not to engage, right? Because it exists within us right now at this very moment.
Perfect.
Thank you. But can I add to that question? If you could go back into time and you could pick someone, a historical someone that you would love to have dinner with, someone who you think would have an impact on your writing poetry, you go back, who would it be? Anyone?
And this is tricky. Um, I mean, I think this answer changes at like any moment. So right now, I'm kind of hanging out with Basquiat. I'm really interested in the type of work Basquiat created, like in his rejection of society, but like still how society like picked him up and like also now how he gets commercialized like into like images. But if you want me to go further back, I'm interested in Mary, yo. Like how do you just out of nowhere have a child, right? And you just be like, I accept this. There's something like that's really deeply profound about that kind of faith. Like, that's just like, this shall be the child of God then, right? Like, not to say necessarily that like I lean any kind of like religious way. I'm just interested like in like when at the time when she's told that you are going to have a baby, and now you showing about like at the third month, so like that's still the first trimester. That's when I want to chat with Mary. And so I'm like, so what's up, dog? Like, like what's going on? Like, how are you feeling? I think that becomes also an interesting question that I would love to discover.
Brilliant answers. Thank you. Excellent questions. Do we have any last minute people before we take a little break for open mic? I'm wondering, Xabiso, do you have anywhere people can get your book? Obviously, people must follow you if they're not following you. All the ads and stuff. Very simple.
I mean, the book right now, you just get it from me. I'm not even really trying to work hard at putting it into bookstores because I kind of did the second edition personally for myself, right? Because I'm working on the second collection. I kind of looked at the second collection and I looked at the first book and I was like, there's no way I can release the second collection and not fix like the first edition, because that was publishers wanting what they wanted at a certain time. So yeah, I think I've got about 20 copies of this book left. If there's still demand for it, I'll print another like 500 and then we'll see what happens. But you can always get it from me. You can always find me like on Google. Just type in my name onto Google, then everything you need should show up. Yeah, I don't know. I I don't know what to tell people these days. If you're looking for me, you can follow me. If you want me, you can find my details on like websites and online. I always quote Napamashiane. She says, your dream dreams of you. So I think I want to remind people that think of your greatest dream and then remember that that dream is always taking 2 steps towards you for every 1 step you take towards it. I'm looking forward to the open mic.
Perfect. That's a perfect closing. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving us your time and your words and your generous answers. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for that. What a special night.